Welcome back to the Full Tank Truck Talk channel. And I'm your host, Phil Eastman, host of the Full Tank with Phil podcast for all of your Cup Series betting action. Give that a look and find me on Instagram and Twitter at Full Tank Phil. But today, once again, happy to be here talking trucks. And on this week's episode, we are going to be talking about Atlanta. So we moved from Daytona just up the road to another drafting track. And we're going to be cruising through some of the bets that stand out to me here in a pretty brisk fashion, I would try to hope for here. And we're going to start off each week trying to give a quick recap of what went down just a week ago. In this case, it was a week ago on Valentine's Day. So we'll take a look back because what we saw at Daytona was Parker Kligerman getting the job done. My hand is up. You know, I had him losing in a group bet against Tyler Ankrum, and Kligerman just got the job done. Now, obviously, his car got disqualified in the inspection afterwards. That's being appealed. Very tough to see for a team like that. But in any case, he gets DQ'd, and Corey Heim ends up becoming the race winner. So even though we didn't take Corey Heim in that specific race, that is why we love those season win totals, baby. Yeah, that's right. That is still available, by the way, on Caesar. So if you watched our season preview app, talked about Corey Heim, 4.5 wins over under. We took the over. It was a little bit juiced. That's still available at the same number, 4.5 on Caesars. Now it's just juiced up to 155, and he's already got one win. So even though Parker was the winner, crossing the finish line first, Corey Heim is awarded the race win, and we will reap benefits there. Other news and notes, I guess, from that race. It didn't start off well. We had only one bet come home for us. It was a Ty Majeski top 5, and that was a 2-1 bet. So happy that came home. But we knew what we were getting into at Daytona. Pure craziness, especially in the Truck Series. Felt pretty decent about a couple of the head-to-heads, but we saw 2 of our guys go out. Caden Honeycutt went out very early. I think it was like the 3rd lap. He was pretty much done for. And our guy, Tyler Ankrum, who I just mentioned, he got busted up as well and was out pretty early. So that was just a bad omen on the day. And hey, what are you going to do? That's Daytona for us. And we knew what we were getting ourselves into with some of those picks. Now, that's not to say we're wounded and we're just going to kind of lick our wounds in the corner. No, we are going to jump back in it for our Atlanta bets. And got a little bit of a over here. Where is it? Over here? Yeah, we got the rundown now over here, and got more of a system to what we're going to be talking about on the show each week. So we're going to start with some of the outright picks, talk about our strategy around that, then get to some of the placements. Usually for me, top 5 is where we're going to focus, and then get into any matchups that stand out. And again, trying to keep things relatively quickly. And I have a finish line segment at the end there. Just any random thoughts that I want to throw out there beforehand. Maybe that didn't make it into an official pick, but we'll see what comes out of that. So that's what we're working with here this week. Let's move over now to the outright segment. And I want to picture that we've got like 3 units to work with here. Okay. Because I think I've got a decent way to spend it. Now, in the finish line segment, I've got something else to throw your way as far as a manufacturer bet, but we got to talk first about coming to Atlanta this weekend. Just a reminder, it's another drafting track, right? If you're just getting back into NASCAR after being out for a while, 3 years ago, they repaved it and reconfigured it. And now it's like a mini super speedway, 1.5 miles. So it races more of like a technical super speedway. And, I think people get excited because it's like, wow, more chaos. But looking back at the track history, kind of like what we were saying about Daytona for the Truck Series, these are big names. The big dogs have won all 3 years in the reconfiguration. And then even going back further than that in Atlanta, it's still a big name. So just ripping and running here from last year on back: Kyle Busch, Christian Eckes, Corey Heim, Kyle Busch, Grant Infinger, Kyle Busch, Brett Moffitt, Christopher Bell. I mean, you get the picture, right? We're not seeing, the point I'm trying to make here is not seeing like a random guy coming from the back. Freddie, Munez, Malcolm in the middle, I don't think has a shot to win this race. You know what I mean? Like you would see in the Cup Series with all the luck being thrown around, that word being thrown around. Truck Series is a little bit different. The big dogs pretty much eat at the super speedways, and this one specifically in these 3 years. So now I mentioned Kyle Busch. That's where we're going to start, okay? Because he is coming down and he's racing in that Spire 7 truck. And they just announced his race schedule. So we'll be talking about Kyle on the show 5 times this year. And to me, that's great. I think it's great when these guys get a chance to come down, and Kyle is the greatest in the Truck Series history. So it's fun to be able to see him compete and see how these guys stack up against him. That's what's fun, right? Rajah Caruth last year at Las Vegas, great example. He goes out, wins the pole, gets the job done, and he did it against Kyle Busch. So pretty fun to see that. So we're going to start with Kyle Busch. He's super short odds, plus 250. And we're getting that on Bet365 right now. But I want to, again, take these 3 units. I want to throw a unit and a half on that. If you're allotting me 3 for an outright segment here, let's throw a unit and a half on Kyle Busch. Last year on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show podcast with Derek Yoder, we talked about this, and he was in the race again last year. And I think I was guilty of saying like, hey, I super speedway type, drafting type, I don't know. It's Kyle Busch. I understand that, but I think things are a little bit different. We don't really know what we're getting out of Kyle. And what did he do? He went out and won the race. So if Kyle Busch is in the race, especially, it seems short, plus 250, but there have been times that Kyle Busch has been minus money to win a truck race. So I'll throw a little bit of money on Kyle. I don't feel like I have to talk him up very much. He is just the man. And in the Truck Series, I mean, it's just, lights out. Good night, Jim Kite. Most of the time he's in it. So that 7 truck, I don't have any worries about that. I think he's going to fit in like a glove, just like he did last year. And it gives you a very good chance. So if you have Kyle Busch in your stable, an outright pick, I think that's not too shabby. Let's move then to somebody else. I'd throw a unit on this next driver, and it's Corey Heim. Plus 800 now, because the odds are now shifting back a little bit for these other drivers because Kyle's bringing it all down. And plus 800 on Caesars there. Corey Heim is very, very serviceable. I mentioned when I was ripping off those names who won the race, he's got a victory here. He's got 3 in the last 3 races, a win, 2 top 5s, an average finish of 12.7, 96.4 driver rating. I mean, that is very solid, puts him well within the top 10 in that category, knocking on a top 5. So very good stuff for Corey Heim. You factor in, it's just his season, right? His season to lose. And he goes out, and even though it was by a disqualification, he gets a victory already to start the season. So just all things turning up in that 11 car. So, 11 truck. So if I have an opportunity to get him at 8-1, I want to sprinkle a little bit on him there. So I know that I'm going chalky, but I think this racetrack and the history that we've seen here shows pretty chalky results. So Kyle Busch, Corey Heim, good place to start. The last throw that I'll put in here for an outright is a half a unit. So if we're taking our 3 units and splitting it all up, throw a half unit on Daniel Hemrick here. That's also at Caesars, but pretty same odds across most of the books that are available at this point. Daniel Hemrick impressed the shit out of me last week, coming down, racing at Daytona in a super speedway race, Truck Series, old Truck Series veteran, hasn't been around since 2016, and it's like he never missed a beat. That 19 truck is real deal. And, you look at Christian Eckes and his time at this racetrack. Christian Eckes has, a victory to show for as well, and really good starting positions. McAnally has had really good starting positions at Atlanta. So I think that's going to set up really well for Daniel Hemrick here. And I mean, you look in that race last week, he finished 7th, crossed the line 8th, finished 7th, like he was right in it. I was kind of thinking that he was going to come in and lay an egg, and he did not. So now we're going to a more technical track where, you have one of the best cars in the garage. I think this is going to work out pretty well for Daniel Hemrick. So to get him at 11-1 on Caesars, throw a half unit on that. I like that. Now, I want to mention Caesars does have an option. So depending on how you allocate your units, Caesar has an option where you could take any of these drivers to win, and you can get those 3 drivers all wrapped into one. If you just want to throw everything together, they allow that. It's plus 105 on Caesars, all 3 of them. And if you don't want to mix and match and try to, do the allocation yourself, that's a good way to just keep things easy, keep it simple, stupid, and, ride with that. So plus 105 for 3 of the biggest dogs in the field to get a victory. That kind of sums up what I'm trying to get at here in the outright segment. Let's go now to the placements segment. So this is like top 3, top 5, and Truck Series doesn't have standalone top 10s, but if anything, strikes me as worth it, I'll always mention it on a week-to-week basis. But just have a couple of quick hitters here, and, interesting to get a little feedback on this. But the first one I'm going to throw out there is a 2-1 bet. And this is another new driver to the Truck Series. Actually, both of these guys I'm going to throw out are new drivers to the Truck Series. But the first one is coming back around, and it's Chandler Smith, top 5, 2-1 for Caesar. So this, I love this because he has experience here. Chandler Smith is not some like Joe Schmo. I mean, he's raced here one time in the Truck Series, and he finished with a 4th place finish. So, and I think he started on the pole, actually. So good stuff for Chandler Smith to kind of look back on and see. I know it's a different team, different manufacturer, but what we saw last week from Chandler Smith is that he's back and ready to play with a 6th place finish in the Daytona race. So again, Hemrick, Smith, guys that were here. Smith, obviously more recently and much younger of a driver, but these drivers outside, they try to take a shot up, coming back down, not missing really a beat here, and flexing their muscles a little bit at Daytona to say, like, all right, we're not putting ourselves in a big hole to make a run at the championship off the bat like we could have done. No, we're a factor. And now going to Atlanta, Chandler Smith, I think, sets himself up real nice to be sneaky here. And I think the books are kind of devaluing him a little bit to give us a 2-1 number. I think that's super speedway odds still, but a 2-1 number for a top 5. We might not see that for a very long time for Chandler Smith, excuse me. So I have to throw it out there as somebody that I'm interested in for sure, driving that 38 truck. I'm very happy with what Front Row put together last week at Daytona. Kind of shocked a little bit. I mean, I was down on Lane Riggs, and he was very much in the race and a factor for a good period of time in that race. So, yeah, Front Row putting something together here for us, and I want to take advantage of it this week with Chandler. So that'll be the first place we start. The second place I want to go here from a top 5 perspective is, and, call me jumping on a bit of a bandwagon or getting caught up in the moment, but Gio Ruggiero, 3-1 on Caesars for a top 5. There was a point in that Friday night race where I said, holy shit, this little guy's going to win this damn thing. Like, this is crazy. Gio Ruggiero showed a lot. And I don't know if that's going to translate into success all year long, but to come in and hop in a truck, go to a racetrack that you haven't been at, and I mean, he almost won the race, leading a ton of laps towards the end in stage 3, and ends up finishing 2nd, 3rd, crossing the stripe. Unbelievable. Just really impressed by this guy. And now we're going to a smaller drafting track. I'm anxious to see what this guy has. And we're going to a track where this team, Taylor Gray, had one race here in that 17 truck and finished 4th. So, I mean, I'm very intrigued to see what Gio is going to be able to do in that 17 truck for Tricom. I mean, just a year ago, it was Taylor Gray getting it done for a top 5. So good stuff, a good start to the year for this rookie. And 3-1 for a top 5. I want to cheer for him in this race because I'm not sure, right? Coda, I don't know what to expect. Sorry, they're not going to Coda. I'm getting ahead of myself. The intermediate tracks, I don't know what to expect when it comes to Gio. So I might not, take him when we get to Vegas or some of these other tracks until he starts to prove it. But if I'm using that logic, he proved it a little bit at Daytona. So I'm comfortable giving it a shot here for Gio Ruggiero and a 3-1 bet. I'm pretty pumped about that. So those are the only placement bets that kind of stood out to me. Obviously, the big dogs, are available at some shorter numbers. You got the Ty Majeskis of the world. You got the Corey Himes, like plus money for a top 5. Kyle Busch, not even worth it. He's like minus 270. Don't even think about that. But the other big names that I'm not talking about, yeah, they're available. But these were 2 that were a little bit longer than I would have expected. So wanted to mention them here. All right, let's jump down now to a couple matchups. And we're pretty much sticking with McAnally in these matchups. And I didn't mean to do that. Just kind of perusing through. Weren't sure how we were going to kind of land on some of these. And the first one I'm going to go with, we're going to go back to our guy, Daniel Hemrick. Again, caught up in what we saw last week, maybe. I'm very interested in this team. This team performed very well last year off the truck, and that's going to be important for both of these guys that I'm talking about here in these head-to-head matchups. Hemrick and, spoiler alert, we're going with Tyler Ankrum because there's no practice this week for the Truck Series and for any series for that matter. And that's going to work in my favor here because McAnally seemed to have it figured out last year. So they're going to hit those same notes, I have to imagine. Not much has changed. And so that's a team that's going to set themselves up in qualifying to have that track position a little bit more of a thing that matters here than the bigger super speedways. And that 19 truck is going to set Daniel up really well. Now, this is why this one could be a little bit controversial is because everywhere you look, right, our guys win the race. Ryan Stevens that win the race and Greg Mathern, they've got Enfinger ranked very high. And I agree when we're talking about super speedway racing. Yeah, Enfinger definitely brings it, but at this racetrack, he has not been able to get it done. I mean, look, super speedway last week, Daytona, he finished 4th or across the stripe 5th. That's a good top 5 there. Perfect. That's what you want. If you have a season-long bet on Enfinger of any sort, yes, great. You're not, shooting yourself in the foot at Daytona. But when we go to this racetrack, Grant Enfinger is surprisingly struggle bus. It's pretty crazy. He has like no real good finishes. Now his driver rating is, somewhat serviceable, but in last 3 races here, since they reconfigured the track, pulling it up now, good starting positions, starting inside the top 10 all 3 times, but his best finish is 12th. That was 3 years ago, 19th the year after that. And then just last season, he started 6th, finished 25th. And he finished on the lead lap only 1 time, but it's not like he's wrecking out. He in 2022, he was 1 lap down. Last year, he was 2 laps down. So this is just a conundrum to me. I see that maybe this racetrack just doesn't match up well for Enfinger. And now he's going to be going up here against Daniel Hemrick, who clearly, like I said, didn't really miss a beat last year, hopping into a ride that fits this racetrack really well in the 19 truck. So I like this minus 115 number here against a favorite. I hate doing it. I do not like betting against Grant Enfinger, but to me, it kind of makes sense just by looking at his numbers at this track since they reconfigured it specifically. Now, let's go to his teammate, Tyler Ankrum, going up against Caden Honeycutt. And these are 2 guys that both disappointed me last week. Okay. So we're throwing them into the disappointment bowl here and seeing who comes out on top. I'm going to go with the Ankrum side of it. That preparation from McAnally is also playing a factor into this. Now, these two on the track together at Atlanta, been there twice together. They're 1-1. Last year, they finished one spot apart. So I believe it was Honeycutt that finished sixth and Ankrum finished seventh, if I'm remembering my research correctly here. But at the end of the day, to me, Tyler Ankrum is just more consistent at this style of track. He has qualified really well. Like last year, if you remember this time last year, Tyler Ankrum left Atlanta leading the points in the Truck Series. He had a decent finish at Daytona, started second in Atlanta, finished seventh. So now you're talking about two drivers who did not, they were the guys that shot themselves in the foot at Daytona, and they're kind of in the need for something big here, or something really solid. I think Tyler Ankrum has a better opportunity to do that, or a better chance, better pedigree resume to do that. 14.7 average finish in the last three races. He has one top 10, two top 15s. Caden Honeycutt, he's got one good finish and, really piss poor finish, 33rd in his two starts here at Atlanta. So both of those times, and he was driving for different teams. He was driving the 04 in 2023, just hopping in and finished 15 laps down. Last year, he was in the 45 truck, so, for the Nice crew, and started 25th. Ends up finishing sixth, so that's a good rebound then for those guys. But my point is, he hasn't started fast in qualifying in two straight times. So I'm going with more of the team situation. I feel like I can trust Ankrum more, and I want to go back to my buddies that Win the Race, because they have a new simulator that you can throw different head-to-head matchups up against. And this was by far, it's the Super Speedway simulator. It keeps it very, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much you're leaning one way or the other, in my use of it so far this week and last week, because it's a Super Speedway, it's keeping the odds pretty close together. This simulator has Ankrum as a minus 137 fair price against Honeycutt. That is by far the biggest advantage that I've seen, according to the simulator, from any head-to-head matchup in sports books. So that was the thing that put me over the top. Honeycutt spitting out, really didn't get any, opportunity to make any mark last week. It was, 3 laps and he's done. He crashes. So not a lot of now I'm talking about Ankrum. He only had 45 more laps, but still 44 more laps than Honeycutt. We'll take it. So two guys in the need of a big finish, or a quality start, quality finish. I'm going to go with more of a, veteran guy in Ankrum, even though Honeycutt is someone that, we have some eyes on from a season-long standpoint. I'm going to go with Ankrum in this matchup to get it done. So that's going to wrap up our head-to-head segment. So just to kind of recap, we had, we had Kyle Busch for an outright. We had Corey Heim, Daniel Hemrick as our outright picks there. And, you can bundle those all together on Caesars if you'd like to. Then we also had Gio Ruggiero and Chandler Smith for a top 5. Ankrum over Honeycutt, Hemrick over Enfinger. So hopefully they come alive for us here. And just wanted to mention, if you disagree with some of the guys that I'm talking about, right? Like Enfinger, if you believe in him and he's going to bounce back and actually get a good finish, they've got some good groups on Caesars for like the top 10s. They can combine 2 or 3 guys for all of them in a parlay to all finish in the top 10. That is a driver where you match him into a few different, other big name guys that we've talked about, and you get a pretty good number. So you can shop that around a little bit. I'd also like to say, if you wanted just, hey, Phil, what's the most simple bet I can make here in the Truck Series? I think Chevy's the move. I mean, they are minus money. I'm going to pull it up right now just to double check of what the latest is. But when I looked earlier before I was recording, it was like minus 130. And I think that if you were just trying to make one bet and make it quick, minus 130 for Chevy seems ridiculous, and that's what it is right now in Caesars. But especially at a super speedway, but you're getting the McAnally guys, you're getting Kyle Busch, you're also getting a Michael McDowell, who's down here racing in the truck series, driving the 07 truck. So a lot of the big name guys are on your team if you're taking the Chevy manufacturer bet. And Kyle Busch, and you're also getting a guy like Rajah Caruth, who, when the race has ranked very high, you're getting Grant Enfinger. I mean, so many bullets in the chamber if you're taking Chevy on this style of track, the super speedway. So I would say Chevy, if you needed something just quick and easy, quick and painless, it gives you a lot of dogs in the fight, and you have a lot of fun watching the race on Saturday afternoon at 1:30. So that'll be how we wrap it up this week. We'll lock them and load them, and we'll be back in a few weeks as the Truck Series takes a couple weeks off. So let me know who you got this week for the Truck Series, and we'll see you next time.